So if you were to have your dream mashup dashboard for your level, and you could design one for your top 5 VPs, do you have a vision of what that would look like, and would it be as good as Google?
It would include all of the things that we've spoken about, focusing on retail performance, whether it's your own stores or it's a partner, depending if you're a retailer or a manufacturer, and how are your comp stores, because that's what you're measuring. It's all the measurements against what your vision of your plan was, and how are we doing against those measurements, and then what are we learning and how do we change? Because if the consumer is saying, I do not like narrow silhouettes, and you keep doing narrow silhouettes, you will fail. So it's constantly having a pulse of the business, a pulse of the industry, across multiple industries, that's really affecting your business day to day.
So let's just talk about the PLM vendor landscape. So the PLM vendors, just like in any technology, and you've seen this through your career, sometimes it's larger companies that are coming from outside the industry, or larger companies that have been in the industry for a long time. And then you have a mix of mid-size and smaller players. Having run both larger companies and also, I think, a few startups, are there issues and concerns around bringing in a vendor because of their size versus them having the right technology? What are some of the risks and things that you have to mitigate in deciding who the vendor is? And what do you give up as a concession, possibly because of the risk issue?
Well, the first thing is you need advocates within your company. So it reminds me of, as a leader, I usually look to my senior management team and the users throughout the organization as to whether or not, is this a good idea? We had an issue, I'm sitting in a meeting on sales and assortment planning with our retail partners. So I said, 7th Online, why don't you look at it? It's a great system. I had to go and brief myself again on the system. Met with Louise Chazen, brought my head, not the CIO, but the head of technology for our coalition to start with. Let him look at it. And then I said, why don't you explore this with some of our key senior leaders in sales and in merchandising to see if there's a benefit here. And they went off and they did that. Well, there was a benefit. I just present and then let go.
So in that case,
I don't endorse. I say, come back.
Right.
Well, it took about 2 years, but I would have liked a faster progress with this particular thing, or maybe it was about 18 months, but they implemented it, and they tested in one division, and it got great success, and then other divisions said, well, I want it in my division. All of a sudden it was, why can't I be first? If it is a tool that people see the benefit of within an organization, it's easy to implement.
Right.
You have to also look at the budget. Does it fit into the budget? Do we have to eliminate something in order to introduce this? And it's the prioritization of technology, which is really key. And where do you stand on that priority list across a large corporation? Now, if you have multi-coalitions, the CIO for the corporation, in this particular case, Martin Schneider at VF, had to look at all the requests for all the brands across 6 coalitions, and then as a group of presidents and CEOs, determine and get your fellow partners to vote on, this is the number 1 priority, this is the number 2, on how to really spend the investment for technology.
And in a smaller company, so do you think
smaller
they have it
company,
easier?
It's much easier. The president of the company says, you know what, this is great, let's do it.
Right. And where does the risk conversation come in? Is the risk that that vendor might not be there? Is the risk that they won't perform?
Well, you do a test first, but the risk is always that you want a financial partner that is stable, that can handle your business depending on your size. Now, if you are a niche type of technology company and you have a small business, probably a good partnership. If you are larger, you want financial stability, you might not take as much of a risk. You want someone who's proven. You want someone many times who has already clients that are your competitors. You want a proven track record. You don't want to make a big investment and be wrong. Because when you make big investments and you're wrong, you don't get to keep your job.
That's right. Let's talk about requirements. If you were going to have the perfect tool set for managing your whole design through delivery process, what are your top 10 priorities to get your job done as the CEO?
Laura, I'm glad you asked that question, because as I was thinking about the PLM boot camp, I'm always thinking about whatever company I'm with, what are the 5 to 10 reports that I need every day to run my business? Because it's a management overview. And in so many technology systems, they forget about the management overview, which is just one piece of paper that gives you enough data to say, I'm on track or I'm not on track. So I made a list. This is what it would be as far as my 10 requirements. I need the consumer data endpoint. So the consumer data input comes from marketing research. What is in her psychographic sort of or demographic input. Secondly is customer data input. And that customer data input comes from our retail partners or our own retail stores. What is the pulse of the business right now? What kind of transactions? What kind of productivity per square foot? What are they buying by category? Is the store laid out properly or not laid out properly? Am I missing opportunities? And oh, by the way, the competitive data input. Is my competitor outpacing me in any category? Is it price? Is it the look of the product? Is it the styling? What do they have that I don't have? So I'm always looking and striving to be number one. Trend services library. You need the trend services so that you have the input of color, fabrics, Premier Vision, the colors through many trend services that are provided, and the pulse of the business, be it Style Site, MSGN. These things are all a library of information that I want to be able to plug into. Design historical library. You need to have a historical library of where you've been, where you're going, the styles that have worked for you. Really only the positive things. You know, the things that didn't do well, you remember. You remember your mistakes. Global sourcing and costing data, that in a very accessible way, so you can roll up. Okay, let's look at our 25 factories and how are they performing? And sort of a measurement of a report card on quality, on shipping, on costing. What percentages are they increasing or decreasing? The costing, and how do we compare to competitors? Is someone getting better costs than we are because we're not negotiating appropriately? The realized margin data through sell-through at retail. This is something that's very hard to get. But at Nautica, we were working on this, in which we would share the information from our retail partners. So we were really clear that, you know what, we thought this was a great style. We got great margin on it. But by the way, it cost us so much in markdowns because it didn't sell at retail. Don't repeat it. Because most people say, oh, we sold this well. It had a great sell-through at wholesale. It performed, I think, quite well at retail. Oh, by the way, you don't realize that your margin dilution was on that style. So having access to that information is really important in not, making the same mistakes. Transportation and distribution data. What's the newest on the transportation? What is it costing us? What's our distribution data? What is it costing per garment to ship it? Handling. As well as, is there new transportation? Maybe we should have a warehouse on the West Coast or in a different location. And so all those types of decisions on how to get efficiencies in the supply chain are packaged in that input. Output. It's really the output. The input's there, we need the output. On order and shipping status, something that is your bloodline every day. And management summary reports on all of this key data. So those are kind of the 10 things that I look at every day. And the biggest is always, where are the revenues? Where's your profitability? Is your SG&A in line? And is your margin growing? So you're always looking for growth in revenues, in margin, in profitability, and reduction in costs.